I'd like to welcome everyone to what is the first plenary session for ISSUP. As you've been told, this is the initial ISSUP meeting, and this is the first plenary session that we're holding for ISSUP. This plenary and the next plenary session speak to the heart of what we're trying to do with ISSUP. You know, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of practice in the field that is evidence-based, but that has not been put into practice. And one of the main goals of the ISSUP network is to take all the research and evidence-based that has been produced in the past to bring it to practice today. And the second goal that we have with plenary session 2 has to do with training and credentialing the addictions workforce, prevention and treatment workers worldwide. And so these two sessions will be the two most important sessions to start off the ISSUP actual session. Now, what I want to talk about real quick before I introduce each of the actual speakers is what I like to do at each international conference that I attend. Today, we all know we're at a crossroads in our field of demand reduction. There's a group of people that are calling to change the UN conventions, to weaken these conventions, to even allow for drug legalization and drug decriminalization. There's another faction that talks about maintaining a war on drugs, to arrest drug users and put them in jail. But fortunately, the majority of people, the majority of governments, and majority of civil society realize that addiction is a disease, it's treatable. Evidence and research and evaluation over several decades have proven that recovery is possible, that you can reduce drug use, you can reduce relapse, you can improve mental health of people who are addicted to drugs, you can increase employment and decrease crime post-treatment, and there is a magnitude of research on this that proves this effectiveness. And this is the path that needs to be taken. Not arresting people, not legalizing. The approach that needs to be taken is more attention to prevention and treatment. And we ask why. Because at most conferences I go, I ask people, based on all the publicity you are hearing this day, how many people do you think, or what's the percentage of the world's population do you think uses drugs? And most people will think 30, 40, 50%, 20% of the world's population are using drugs based on all the publicity they hear and all the cries for legalization and everything, when in fact, the best compendium of data that we have to estimate world drug use is the UN World Drug Report. Every year, the UN puts out a World Drug Report that summarizes all the data collected, all the studies, all the surveys done worldwide. And every year, that study comes out. And for at least the last 7 years, the UN World Drug Report has basically noted that drug use has remained stable worldwide. Drug use has not increased a lot, it has not decreased a lot, it has stayed stable. And let me get this over here, and that rate happens to be only 5% of the world's population uses drugs. 95% do not use. So when you look at this information, that tells us a few things. It tells us that our prevention and treatment programs work. This backs up the research, the evaluations that have been done for many decades that talk about effectiveness in treatment and prevention. Because if treatment and prevention did not work, that little red pie, that little square, that little indentation in this chart would be wider than 5%. But the fact that only 5% use drugs is testament that the prevention and treatment programs that many of you operate are very successful. So the arguments in the international community and at international forums should not be for legalization, it should not be for locking up people, it should be we have the evidence, we have the proof that treatment and prevention works. And because of our success, we have maintained drug use in only 5% of the world's population. And that's which is the approach that needs to be taken. In effect, more attention, more money needs to be put in prevention and treatment. Because we see the theme that we have for the event today, which the Royal Highness Princess Mother was talking about, you know, all people get happiness and free from drugs. So I ask you a question, can people be free from drugs? If you're talking about 40, 50% of the world's population using drugs, no. When you're talking about only 5% using drugs, of which the UN report has shown only 1/2 of 1% of problem drug users, yes, you can basically free a lot of people from drugs. You can support recovery. Recovery is an attainable goal. It's realistic, and it can be done. So therefore, one of the main goals of ISSUP is to basically take all the practice, all the evidence we have in prevention and treatment, and to get this disseminated worldwide, to get civil society, to get governments, to get international organizations, treatment prevention decision makers, policy makers, and workers to do more prevention and treatment because it works. It's the most cost effective. It is the smartest way to go. Not legalizing, not putting people in jail, but taking a public health approach based on the documented research. We have decades of research that treatment and prevention works and that recovery is possible. We do not have decades of research that says people putting drug users in jail works, and we do not have documented research that says legalizing or decriminalization works. The research and the evidence shows that it's prevention and treatment, and that's the main purpose of the ISSUP movement, is to get prevention and treatment workers mobilized worldwide, to get them the practices and skills that they need, to get them certified, to get programs licensed, and to improve prevention and treatment, because that is a smart way to go. Unfortunately for us today, we have a very distinguished panel of experts here with us today. We're going to open the first ISSUP plenary session on translating scientific research into practice. We're going to lead off with a keynote address by Dr. Gilberto Gera, a longtime colleague of mine in INL and many of us here from the UN. Okay, Nicholas Clark from the World Health Organization, another close colleague of ours who works in close collaboration with many of us worldwide, is going to speak second. Shirley McKell of SME is going to speak on the universal treatment curriculum, which is a big part of ISSUP, and Zilli Zaboter of APS is going to talk about the universal prevention curriculum, which is a prevention component of ISSUP. So I'd like to start off by introducing Dr. Gilberto Gera, who will provide the keynote speech for us today.